Kylian Mbappe now. The French Football Federation say he will not require surgery after breaking his nose yesterday. They haven't confirmed yet his availability for their upcoming games, saying they'll do further tests today. Well, we can speak to Professor Ramindar Dhillon, an expert ear, nose and throat consultant working out of Princess Grace Hospital in London now. Really good to get your insight on this. Let's start with the very basics. Just tell us typically how painful is a broken nose and how long would it take to heal normally?
Well, a broken nose can be very painful, particularly if it's associated with a fracture. So it's like a bruise. It's like hammering your thigh or your forearm. So that would be quite painful, and touching it would be extremely painful. And any associated fracture would make the movement even more painful. Typically, in contact sports, it's a lateral injury, so it's a trauma from the side of the nose rather than a frontal injury. And it may be just a soft tissue injury, which is what I suspect, particularly as the Federation have decided he doesn't require an operation in the immediate future. But occasionally it's associated with a fracture of the nasal bones. That's near the top of your nose rather than the wobbly bit at the tip. And if the fracture is not displaced, that doesn't have a step, it will probably heal by itself in about 3 to 4 weeks, provided there's no further trauma.
So in normal circumstances, how long would you advise someone to avoid any contact sport?
If there's a fracture, whether it's displaced or you've corrected a fracture, you would probably look at about 4 weeks. If it's a soft tissue injury, it's a bit like a bruise. The bruise will probably last 7 to 10, maybe 12 days, and it will gradually subside and improve. So it depends on whether it's a soft tissue injury or associated with a fracture. I suspect with Kylian Mbappe's case, he probably has just a soft tissue injury or possibly a fracture that's not stepped or displaced.
And I mean, we know Mbappe will probably try to find a way to play at some point. He's been speaking about wearing a mask. How much protection does something like a mask offer, and what are the risks involved? Because I guess you alluded to it before, that the concerns would be risk of further injury.
Well, I don't think anybody hitting the mask is going to prevent further injury. I think it's a precaution on the part of the individual wearing the mask. And it perhaps gives them a little bit of confidence because they're likely to have lost some confidence in the sort of physical aspects of the game, of the sport. So it's a sort of warning sign, if you like, for the individual to be a little bit careful and perhaps the opposition to be a little bit careful. But I suspect in Euro 2024, I don't think people are going to respect the mask too much.
Yeah, and I mean, France play on Friday. That's 3 days' time. In your opinion, do you think that would simply be too soon for Mbappe? And how uncomfortable would he be if he did end up playing?
Well, he's a professional, and this is sort of one of the pinnacles of the professional game. So I'm not surprised that he's considering playing. I think the immediate aftermath of the pain and swelling will have subsided over 3-4 days. And it's deciding whether you want to take a risk. If he doesn't have a fracture, it'll be like a bruise. So he's unlikely to suffer unduly. If it's a fracture and he traumatizes it again, then it may get displaced or worsened. So this is a judgment call from himself and his federation.
And apologies for the very simplistic question, but is his breathing going to be affected? Because that's what I was thinking when I saw a broken nose. You would think, actually, with the fact that he might not be able to breathe properly through his nose, be something to consider.
Yeah, I mean, usually there is some nasal congestion, and that's a combination of swelling in the internal nose due to the trauma. And also sometimes there's bleeding and you get blood clots in the nose. But if it isn't a major trauma, usually that gets better over a period of 2-3 days, actually quite quickly. So I imagine, given the fact there's not going to be any immediate intervention, that isn't a factor that's going to be very prominent.
OK, it has been absolutely great to get your insight on that. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much.